Synthesized data is important by Jari L. Our motivation and objectives. I will explain the need for synthetic data. I will explain how to synthesize data. I will show you synthetic data versus a real data set. I will show you my experiment. Then I will go through my recommendations and conclude with my further work. There's a large need for synthetic data for multiple reasons. One of the largest reasons is data is the most valued commodity. In 2017, The Economist released an article stating that data has now surpassed oil in value. And 2 years later, Forbes also released an article stating the same thing, that data has surpassed oil in value. Also, everyone who uses any sort of technology in this day and age will leave some sort of data footprint, whether it is an ATM transaction, or if it is simply buying something at the store, or if you're using the Uber app in order to get somewhere, and or your GPS. All collect data and is stored and potentially used at some point. And also, the more data you have, the better your algorithm will perform. I've heard several times from other data scientists that only if I had a bit more data, I think I would have done better. Or only if I would have had a little bit more data, I could have predicted more accurately, or classified better. So with more data, it just gives you more options. Another topic is data privacy. At the end of the Donald Trump election in the U.S. and a year after the Brexit campaign for the UK leaving the EU, there was a scandal with a company called Cambridge Analytica. They apparently had harvested 87 million Facebook profiles without getting consent of the individuals. They also claim to have over 5,000 data points on each U.S. voter, which is extremely unethical if they did not go through the correct process of acquiring this data. As a result of this scandal, the EU has passed the General Data Protection Regulations, which are pretty much sanctions that now put rules on how data can be distributed and how data can be shared, and how much information you have to let people know if you're going to ask them for consent. I'm sure you've seen, as in the past couple years, a lot more private policy explanations and do you accept the cookies, and that would be a result of that. But with that, that makes it harder for people who need the data to use it. Although having 87 million Facebook profiles would be the dream for any data scientist to work with, it isn't ethical. And if it isn't ethical, then more times than not, it's not legal. And then if it's not legal, it's just not right. So that makes acquiring data so much more difficult if you can't share it the way we used to, and you can't get it as easily, which will then make the cost the cost of acquiring data, storing data, and using data go up also. And lastly, the more data, the better. If you're tapping into a new market, you need data in order to target specific subgroups and or recognize churn rates, or what increases loyalty or what decreases loyalty. You need data for all of those things, and you need your models to be able to predict them with high accuracy. And then again, the more data you have, the better your models will predict, more than likely. So then I'm sure you're wondering, how do you synthesize data? Oftentimes, it's you. Oftentimes, the contrary to the traditional discriminative modeling is used, and it's called generative modeling. Often, it's the generative deep learning which is used, and which I used in my experiment. But generative deep learning can be responsible for creating music, creating original images, original story pieces, all the way to creating news articles, and or replacing someone's face and voice, and plastering it onto a new body, which is called the deep fake, which is also generative deep learning. The model that I use is called a conditional tabular GAN, which in turn can synthesize tabular data with very, very similar and high highly accurate distributions. Uh, Also, another very previously state of the art generative deep learning model was the GPT-2, which can create an original story from a human inputted prompt. So if you put in a little prompt, it will, in return, very, very quickly give you a story that is created just from the words that you've said. So here's an example of synthetic data versus real data that's been generated using the CT GAN, or the conditional tabular GAN, that I use for my experiment. You can see that in most of the categories, most of the sections, it is very, very close in their distributions. It's not off. You will see a bit off because the conditional, my synthetic data set only had 54,000 rows, while my real training data actually had 59,400 rows. So you'll see the scale is a little off, but for the most part, the distributions are very, very similar. You can see the amount of water in the wells is very similar. The district code is very similar. Longitude, latitude, region code. There are definitely some differences, but it would be it wouldn't make much sense if you were just able to it wouldn't be very useful just to have the same two sets of the same training data. So you do need that element of randomness in there. So for my experiment, I trained a random forest algorithm on both my training data as well as my synthetic data set. And my results were, I found them to be very remarkable. My synthetic data set with only 56,000 rows was able to classify whether a well was functional, non-functional, or needed repair with 72%. And with my real data set, I was able to do it um, with nearly 60,000 rows. I was able to predict with 80% accuracy. I found this to be very, very interesting because it went to show that I believe if I were to add more rows, then my accuracy would increase. Because the first time I did the experiment, I only did it with 50,000 rows and I got accuracy of 70%. So it could be a result of two things. The data set is very reproducible, or this is just a very, very good model. Uh, so then my recommendations would be, if you are short on data or you do not have the funds to complete a project, data generation is a must. If you are looking to do a discriminative project and you are lacking data, or you feel as though you need more diverse data or different data, then this is the route to go. I've not seen a cap on how much data you can generate, so that is also something to really look into. You can generate, oh yeah, and then my next point, you can generate as big of as a data set as you need with nearly the same properties as the initial data set. Also try and use the GAN on big data to see if it can make more and more data for your algorithms. And then further work, I would like to combine both synthetic data. I would like to combine both the synthetic data set and the real training data set to see how the classification and regression models perform. I would like to try this framework with a much larger platform, such as an SQL database, or maybe Apache Spark, with some big data. I would want to see what makes, I want to see what makes the rows I can generate. And I would also like to see if, in fact, more rows makes your discriminative modeling better. If it still holds true that the larger the data set, more likely the better you are predicting. Thank you for your time, and I hope you found this extremely informative. Please drop a comment in the comment area if you have any questions or any concerns. Thank you for your time.